This is the Lesbian Historic Motif Podcast, brought to you by Heather Rose Jones. The show looks at lesbian and sapphic themes in history and literature, and historical fiction with queer female characters, including fantastic versions of the past. We present research, interviews, news of the field, book listings, and original historical fiction for your enjoyment. For even more historic research, check out our blog. Welcome to On the Shelf for February 2025. One of my holiday projects was to start the massive reorganization of my personal library, which means that the books on queer history are now comfortably spread out into two bookcases, rather than being crammed double-stacked into one. I've also moved them to the bookcase directly in front of the library door, since they're the volumes I access most frequently. What this means is that I am now free to buy more books, though, as it happens, I haven't done so this month. Since it's February, that means that submissions are closed for this year's fiction series. But since it's February 1st, that means I haven't read them yet and made my selections. So watch the blog or my social media for the announcement of this year's lineup. Submissions were very sparse for the first half of the month, and I confess I was freaking out just a little bit. But they picked up later and we ended with our usual number. My usual practice is not to read any of the submissions until they're all in, to avoid the possibility of bias based on receipt date. But from the login process, I can tell you that we once again have a very diverse set of submissions, both in terms of settings and authors. And, as always, I'm proud that the authors have entrusted me with their work, whether it ends up on the podcast or not. I've kept my New Year's resolution to try to keep up a more regular blogging schedule for reviewing and summarizing publications. At the time of recording, I've blogged 5 new items. I followed up last month's review of Stephen Turton's study of queer vocabulary in English dictionaries with a related article by him, The Lexicographical Lesbian, Remaking the Body in Anne Lister's Erotic Glossary. Working my way through articles I have uploaded on my iPad, I followed it with Teresa Braunschneider's The Macroclitorid, the Tribid, and the Woman, Configuring Gender and Sexuality in English Anatomical Discourse, which looks at the context of this anatomical myth in 18th century medical writing. I finally blogged 2 collections of poetry that I've been mining for my poetry podcasts. The Defiant Muse, French feminist poems from the Middle Ages to the present, edited by Domna C. Stanton, and Poems Between Women, 4 Centuries of Love, Romantic Friendship, and Desire, edited by Emma Donoghue. Finally, I expressed my disappointment with the article collection Queering the Middle Ages, edited by Glenn Berger and Stephen F. Kruger, which managed to avoid including anything on female homoeroticism at all. The new fiction, however, will never disappoint. There's a belated January book that I hadn't realized was historical, Distant Thunder by Peggy J. Herring from Bella Books. Leo yearns to be free, to ride the vast empty spaces of the open West and escape the endless drudgery of running a farm. It's a hard life, and every night she tumbles into bed exhausted to dream of freedom. When free-spirited Cordy rides into her life, Leo both resents and envies Cordy's freedom, not to mention the strange feelings that Cordy seems to have awakened in her, feelings she can't explain or comprehend. Soon, Cordy leaves to join Leo's father as a train-robbing outlaw, but the memory of the kiss they share sends Leo on a journey to find the other woman, and her own self-discovery. I'm holding off on one of the February books because it doesn't seem to have a live buy link yet, so I'll catch up on that one next month. That leaves 5 more new releases, an unusually low number, especially since February is often a popular month for romance releases. But maybe they'll show up in my searches next month. Minus, Dying Gods No. 4 by Alicia Kemp, is a spin-off from a series set in ancient Greece, focusing on 2 minor characters from that series. The author notes that it can be read by itself, but does include spoilers for the main series. The cover copy is exceedingly brief, so let's see if I can make this dramatic. Brito Martis. I have always been the perfect second sister, dedicating my life to my people, to my goddess, and to my mother, the Minas of Thera. Now I've betrayed a goddess, commandeered a stolen fleet, and am taking my people into battle against my mother's orders. for Sira. Sira. Some women are born to rule. Others carve out their thrones from the bones of their sisters, their mothers, their friends. I was never destined for such a throne. I was never meant to be Minos. Benefactor to the Baroness by Melissa Kendall from Dragonblade Publishing looks like it has a Victorian setting. The wordiness of the cover copy makes up for the previous title. This book is third in a series, but they appear to be unconnected with independent characters, and this is the only sapphic entry. In a world of rules, surrendering to love is the only rebellion that matters. Plagued by survivor's guilt after escaping her impoverished childhood selling matchsticks, Fontaine Shepherd, the Dowager Lady Carey, uses her position on the board of a charitable foundation to relocate starving orphans to the New World, until contact with the new office is abruptly lost. Fearing the foundation will discover she's been clandestinely using funds to bribe workhouse owners to release children, she decides to travel across the ocean and re-establish communication herself. Except the only captain who can transport her in time insists that she not travel alone. Facing a lonely life after marrying off her nieces, Rosemary Summersby reluctantly agrees to attend a ladies' charity group. There she meets the vivacious Lady Carey, who challenges her long-held beliefs of how a lady should look and act. Compelled by a desire to experience the excitement of which her niece often speaks, Rosemary accompanies the Dowager Baroness to a workhouse and witnesses the cruelty of poverty firsthand. Then Lady Carey stumbles into Rosemary's cottage one night with an outrageous request: to travel across the ocean as her companion and help her uncover the mystery behind the missing orphans. Unable to convince the Dowager Baroness of the dangers of her plan, and remembering the sense of responsibility that drove her to accept 3 orphans into her life 15 years prior, Rosemary decides to join Lady Carey on her trip. But as the vast ocean and a noble mission stretches before them, a shared purpose and a single bunk ignite an unexpected passion that makes both women question what they truly want for themselves. This next book has a sapphic protagonist, but it isn't clear that she has a central romance within the story. There is a secondary gay male couple who are also central to the action. The book is Mutual Interest by Olivia Wolfgang Smith from Bloomsbury, USA. At the turn of the 20th century, Vivienne L'Espérance is determined to flee her origins in Utica, New York, and avoid repeating her parents' dull, limited life. When she meets Oscar Schmidt, a middle manager at a soap company, Vivienne finds a partner she can guide to build the life she wants. Not least because, more interested in men himself, Oscar will leave Vivienne to tend to her own romances with women. But Vivienne's plans require capital, so the two pair up with Squire Clancy, scion of an old American fortune. Together, they found Clancy and Schmidt, a preeminent manufacturer of soap, perfume, and candles. When Oscar and Squire fall in love, the trio form a new kind of partnership. Vivienne reaches the pinnacle of her power, building Clancy and Schmidt into an empire of personal care products while operating behind the image of both men. But exposure threatens, and all 3 partners are made aware of how much they have to lose. Penny Mickleberry's books are always worth snapping up. Her current release is Payback from Bywater Books. World War II ended less than 10 years ago, and the Korean War less than 1. But no one has recovered from wartime privations, especially the colored soldiers who fought a ruthless enemy on foreign lands, expecting to return home with all the rights and privileges of American citizenship. But those rights and privileges remain few and far between, and Mickleberry's cast of characters find themselves reflecting on the Harlem they call home. They are educated and unschooled, wealthy and desperately poor, committed to improving circumstances for Negroes and abjectly hopeless. They create a family of and for themselves, women, men, children, gays, and the proudly self-named. They commit themselves to helping to create a world to benefit their people based on hard work, artistic expression, and a faith in their community. They have learned to live in the larger world by 2 guiding principles. Each one teaches one, and harm to one is harm to all. Because in this neighborhood, payback will always be swift and painful. Sheridan Le Fanu's sapphic vampire story Carmilla has inspired a lot of variations from modern writers. The latest in this tradition is Hungerstone by Kat Dunn from Zando. Lenore is the wife of steel magnate Henry, but 10 years into their marriage, the relationship has soured and no child has arrived to fill the distance growing between them. Henry's ambitions take them out of London and to the imposing Nethershaw Manor in the countryside, where Henry aims to host a hunt with society's finest. Lenore keeps a terrible secret from the last time her husband hunted, and though they never speak of it, it haunts their marriage to this day. The preparations for the event take a turn when a carriage accident near their remote home brings the mysterious Carmilla into Lenore's life. Carmilla, who is weak and pale during the day, but vibrant at night. Carmilla, who stirs up a hunger deep within Lenore. Soon, girls from local villages begin to fall sick before being consumed by a bloody hunger. Torn between regaining her husband's affection and Carmilla's ever-growing presence, Lenore begins to unravel her past, and in doing so, uncovers a darkness in her household that will place her at terrible risk. I've only read 3 books this month, all audiobooks as usual. I was exploring some sale books to see if I could find any interesting historic mysteries, and thought that Murder in an English Village by Jessica Ellicott looked interesting. It's set between the World Wars and involves 2 old-school chums, one an English spinster and one an American adventuress, who stumble into several mysteries. It's a pleasant enough mystery, though I was unwarrantedly hoping for a touch more sapphic subtext along the lines of Miss Bunkle's book. That same audiobook sale led me to pick up Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, about the difficulties of being a woman writer. Pair this classic with Joanna Russ's How to Suppress Women's Writing, and then sink into a deep depression about how little has changed since those books were written. I finished up this month with Emma Denny's sapphic medieval romance, All the Painted Stars. This book is a follow-on from her previous one, which focused on a gay male couple. The 2 stories are connected by family ties. I found it to be a nice, well-written romance, but I had to suppress my historian's reflexes a bit too often for comfort. It wasn't a matter of large inaccuracies, but a constant flow of small details that kept distracting me from the endearing main characters. And that concludes the show for this month. I have a couple feelers out for upcoming interviews, but didn't manage to fit one into my schedule this time. If you're an author with a book coming out that fits into this podcast, and if I haven't already interviewed you on the show, I'd love for you to reach out and ask. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Lesbian Historic Motif Podcast. See the show notes for links to people and topics. Most shows will have a transcript linked as well. If you have a book announcement, a topic suggestion, or might like to appear on the show, please drop me an email. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate it and subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and consider supporting our Patreon.